Thoughts from yesterday's Open Gophers practice, and then we're breaking down the national champions, Michigan Wolverines. Who have they lost, and will they fall off? Today on Locked On Golden Gophers.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Gopher fans? You're listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. We shifted up a little bit because we had a show on Friday, but we wanted to have one on Saturday as well on Sunday. Today is Sunday, but from Saturday's practice, because we had our first open practice, I wanted to give you some insights on takeaways from that practice on today's show, but we will be back at it again Monday through Friday this upcoming week. Now, as we get into these practice thoughts, we're going to talk about some things that shouldn't put you on high alert, because this is still early. This is still the first week of practice. This was their fifth practice. They practiced Monday, Tuesday, had off on Wednesday, practiced Thursday, Friday, and practiced on Saturday. And Saturday was one where they had a ton of reps, a ton of reps. We were out there for like 3+ hours total, but overall, the Gophers had a somewhat productive day. A lot of interesting insights, but nothing to exactly take away from being so early in these stages. Then we're going to move on to our daily opponent breakdown. Today will be Michigan, the week 5 opponent, but we'll continue that all throughout the week as well. So if you need to learn about your Gophers opponents, be sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube so you don't miss any of your daily content moving forward. Now let's talk about these fall camp findings, because like I said, there's not a whole lot to glean from the first open practice number 5 overall. But that said, here are some things I noticed. Starting on the defensive side of ball, the defense looked fired up. It was bringing the juice. And last year, it felt like a down year, not only on the field, but also in the energy and the confidence from the jump, even before players were getting injured. Now, that group that was on the field, they struggled, but even off the field, it just didn't look like they had the fire, the desire, or the swagger about them on the field. And that was not the case with this group and what we saw in this first practice yesterday. Now, names to mention, absolutely: Devin Eastern, Anthony Smith, Ja Joyner. All three of them were menaces on the defensive line yesterday. They were giving the O-line work. They were getting in the backfield. They were stuffing runs. They were in the quarterback's face. Those three players are hopefully going to be some of the highest upside players for the Gophers on this defense and continue to do what we saw in yesterday's practice throughout the entire season, whether it be Iowa, whether it be North Carolina, whether it be Michigan, what have you. These three players have the talent to give any offensive line some trouble. So Devin Eastern, Anthony Smith, Ja Joyner, really impressive in that open practice. You move beyond that, I think Maverick Baranowski is going to have a really big year. You didn't see a whole lot in the practice yesterday, so to speak, or anything that made you go, holy crap, or holy wow, or whatever you want to say. But Maverick Baranowski, to me, looks night and day difference when it comes to his confidence on the field, when it comes to his communication on the field. And so he is a player that I think will play a lot more instinctive. He's going to be a disruptor in this defense. And I think Coach Corey Heatherman is excited for him as well. But as opposed to last year, where he was kind of stuck thinking and he was playing a little bit behind because he was playing earlier and more reps than anticipated heading into the year. Now, you move beyond that, there are some injuries that we are hoping will get back to the field relatively quickly. Darius Green, Ethan Robinson, neither one of them practicing in yesterday's practice. Those are two players that could potentially be starters for the Gophers all season. So hopefully they can get back to it. They seem like they're relatively close. Ethan Robinson actually suited up, but then was not cleared to practice by the training team yesterday. So he ended up taking his pads off and kind of remaining out for the rest of the day. Hopefully those two can make it back, but beyond them, Zaquan Bryan, Rylan Kelly, both holding their own with the ones in their opportunities. Now, yes, there might have been a blip here too, but I feel like you could say that about any position across the entirety of the Gophers' day, whether it was offense or defense. So definitely still the opening weeks, but I really like the physicality. I really like the speed. I really like the learning curve that they're getting, and they're showing that they can be in there on that field and not be a liability. So definitely love to see the growth from both of those young cornerbacks who will probably be needed throughout this season. Now, beyond them, I think the safety position is still up for grabs. There were combinations of Kerry Brown, Aiden Gooseby, Coleman Bryson, Giante McMillian. Coy Parrish got some reps here and there, usually with the twos, but still 5 different safeties getting looks in that deep backfield. Overall, I don't know where that's going to go. I wouldn't even call my shot right now. It looked like Aiden Gooseby got a lot of reps, but he is also, of all those guys, one of the only returners with some actual on the field time from last year. So I mean, maybe that's why he's kind of leading off, especially with Darius Green not playing. But on the flip side of it, maybe he is earning it. Maybe he is taking that next step, because there were struggles on the field with him last year, but hopefully he can bounce back from that. Now, like I said, I'm a big fan of Kerry Brown. I think he could definitely find his way into the starting opportunity for the Gophers. Coleman Bryson has had flashes in his time with the Gophers so far. Giante McMillian is a name that we've seen both at the safety position, in the nickel position, and a lot of versatility with him. So I know the Gophers like him. And then Coy Parrish, they're trying to find ways to get him in different circumstances, in different situations, and get him a lot of reps here in the fall. Coach Fleck talked about Coy Parrish in the presser after the practice and talked about how he's not ready to play right now, but he is picking things up fast. They're seeing the flashes and they're excited by his potential. So overall, you love to hear things like that. Coy Parrish was also working with the returners. That would be an awesome avenue for him to get onto the field in a quicker manner. Also, he was a dynamic returner in his high school career. So hopefully that can carry over. Now, a name that maybe you wouldn't expect, but really popped off the page, really jumped out, stood out for me yesterday was Lucas Finnessy on the edge position. He was getting after it. He was giving some of the offensive line problems at times. He was finding ways to contribute. And I think he's a player who could find himself into the rotation of this defensive line, especially if he continues to produce at that type of output. And then finally, another edge rusher in Jackson Howard. The coaches love Jackson Howard, plain and simple. They love his work ethic. They love what he's brought to the culture. They love how he's bought into the culture. And it seems like they are very intrigued by what he can bring as he continues to learn and develop. But if he can continue to pick it up fast, his culture and his leadership and his mindset is something they all love. As he continues to learn this system, which is different than what he had over at LSU, that can maybe get him more and more opportunities onto the field this upcoming season. So that's the offensive side or defensive side. Let's flip to the offense. Now, this offense can move, but expect them to, take the underneath routes, take the checkdowns if they are there. That is one thing we consistently saw from the practice yesterday. We saw it in the spring as well, but I think we saw maybe 3 or 4 passes beyond 10 to 15 yards with the ones in a team formatted period, like a 7-on-7 or an 11s. But Max Brosmer, he sees the field. He has the power to make the changes at the line, but if the check down is there, he is going to take that in rhythm and hope for yards after catch, as opposed to sitting on and waiting for an explosive play to potentially come free and then not having either available. And all of a sudden it's a scramble drill or the defense is in your face or something like that. Max Brosmer has mentioned all offseason that playing on time is a huge factor in this offense and a huge factor for him and his success. And you could see that in full force yesterday. He is going to play on time. He's going to hit the checkdowns. He's going to take the underneath, but he wants to move the ball as effectively as he can. Now, Coach Fleck also talked about in the presser after the practice that they're going to get creative with these running back usage, especially in the passing game, and that they can pass to run, which is something you have not heard here with Coach Fleck. He mentioned they've tried it in the past before, but haven't been effective at it, but this group should be able to do it. So overall, that is a new insight we've gleaned. Drake Lindsay showed some anticipation throws throughout the practice, but he also took some unnecessary risks, and he also held the ball out over the line to cross in for the end zone after a read option touchdown, and PJ Fleck was not having that, and he definitely let him hear about it. But beyond that, I think I've been pretty neutral about our wide receiver group all offseason. I've talked about that. I'm excited by the potential of a lot of the younger guys. I am big on Daniel Jackson, and I've been a big fan of Le'Meke Brockington potentially stepping up into a wide receiver 2 position. I've talked with some on Twitter about how I don't think we should be super critical about Elijah Spencer's drops in the spring because, again, these were practices and not live drops. In his actual career, he has 155 targets and 6 total drops, so he hasn't really had the dropsies in actual games. But yesterday, it was a mixed bag of results. He had an amazing back shoulder grab for a touchdown, the best play of the entire day for the Gophers by far, and that shows you the upside he can bring. And he also had 1 or 2 drops on the day. So you definitely want to see it clean up. And it's not just him. You saw drops from Pierce Walsh. You saw drops from some of the younger receivers. You saw short throws. There were hiccups all over the field for this Gophers offense that is definitely still trying to put things together. But that being said, I think I left yesterday's practice being more worried about this wide receiver room beyond Daniel Jackson more than anything else. I think that there were some great moments. Like I said, that back shoulder was beautiful, but on the same time, there were also drops. There were also moments where no one was open and the defense had him clamped up. And there were also times where no one has really pulled away to make themselves a clear number 2 option. So overall, I'm hoping we can see more there, but it definitely has me a little bit skeptical of the wide receiver room right now. Now, I would love to see 2 of New K's, Kenrick Lanier, TJ McWilliams, Tyler Williams, get some real run this year, get some opportunities to mix in and rotate with some of the older guys to show who could be the future of this room. But I don't necessarily trust that this offensive staff is going to give us that opportunity. Now, Christian Driver is a name that has been mentioned a lot, especially with Big Ten Media Days and whatnot. He was in a non-contact practice jersey, but he also had the most explosive play of the day with Max Brosmer. The offensive line looks fairly good, but there were a number of low snaps from Greg Johnson that I noticed. There were also some low snaps from Ashton Beers, so that has to get cleaned up over these next few weeks. So overall, that was kind of a worry for the offense. But then Nathan Roy looks to be the clear-cut number 2 left tackle behind Ariante Ursery. But the right tackle position looks like it is definitely a split between Daniels and Lewis right now. It could be a battle all the way through. It could even battle into some of the early games as well. But again, all of this is early, very early practice insights. A lot can change. There are 2 more practices that will be available to the media. Unfortunately, I can only attend one of those due to conflicts outside of work, but we will keep you posted here with the news at Locked On Golden Gophers, so be sure to hit subscribe. But we're moving on to Michigan and their changes at coaching positions, at playing positions. Are they going to be able to maintain the level of elite play they had last year? Will they be in the playoff conversation, or could Minnesota upset them? We'll dive into it all coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at eBay Motors, because eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. They've got superchargers and roof racks, exhaust kits, and so much more. You can find air and fuel delivery, transmission and drive chain, brakes and parts. You can find anything you're looking for at ebaymotors.com, and they have the number 1 guaranteed eBay guaranteed fit, and I am with that 100% of the way. So with the eBay guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back. So you'd love to take that weight off your shoulders and know that you can feel confident getting what is right for your vehicle. And with over 122 million parts, it doesn't matter if you're into speed, power, or style, they've got you covered. So definitely head on over to ebaymotors.com and keep your ride or die alive. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP. So go to ebaymotors.com, eligible items only, exclusions apply, and the eBay guaranteed fit is for U.S. customers only. All right, Gophers fans, we're diving into the Michigan breakdown. This is a little bit longer of a show with those practice notes and our typical breakdown outlets, but I'll try to keep it quicker for you. Now, they have a new head coach in Sherrone Moore. We are familiar with Sherrone Moore after last year with some of the suspensions and what have you. He was the offensive coordinator, but he stepped up to be the head coach in multiple games. This will be his first year on the job, but he has served as a head coach for this team in multiple games just last year. Now, he has been the offensive staff of the Michigan Wolverines for 6 years at the tight end and offensive line positions. He was also an offensive coordinator for Michigan in 2023, and then a co-offensive coordinator in 2022 and 2021. Now, those 3 years, Michigan was the Big Ten champion for all 3 of them. So overall, his offense, the input he has had for the coordination of the offense has led to a lot of success over the years. Now, on top of that, he served as a head coach, like I mentioned, for 4 games last season: Bowling Green, Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Now, 3 of those 4 games are conference games. 2 of those 4 games are against 2 of the best teams in the entire Big Ten Conference, and they didn't falter. They won all of those games when everybody might have doubted them, when everybody thought maybe they'd fall apart because Harbaugh wasn't there. Sherrone Moore held his own, and the offense kept going. It didn't feel like it missed a beat. And he has shown that he can handle the duties, and the team rallied around him. So I think he's going to be fine in that position. You move to the offensive coordinator. It's year 1 for Kirk Campbell, though he is heading into year 3 with Michigan. He was the quarterback's coach last year, and he was an offensive analyst the year prior. But he was the quarterback's coach for J.J. McCarthy last year, where he set a single season program records in completion percentage and interception percentage. And the offense was 14th in scoring. So he definitely was a helpful hand to Sherrone Moore in this offensive system. Now, prior to Michigan, Campbell was an OC and a quarterback's coach for Old Dominion with some solid success. Plus, he had previous experience as a coordinator and play calling at a lower level of football as well. And he has been an analyst for Penn State for 3 years in his experience as well. So he's been with other power programs. He's been a play caller before. He has been all sorts of things. So this isn't new for him. He has experience behind him. And then you move to the defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. Now, if you don't know that name, you haven't been paying attention to the NFL on the defensive side of things for many years, because he's been in the NFL for the past 20 years. He was the architect of the defense that Michigan has run for the last 3 years from people within his coaching tree and styles. But he coordinated most recently the Giants of the past 2 years, and then the Ravens for like 12 or 10 years prior to that. So he was a coordinator for the Giants and Ravens over the last 12 years. He also coordinated for the Broncos and for the Raiders in the early 2000s. So he has a ton of defensive coordinator experience. He has extremely creative blitz packages. He is a very aggressive defensive coordinator. And even with the Giants having a terrible offense in 2022, his defense helped them not only get to the playoffs, but also get a win in the playoffs. So Martindale is an amazing addition for this Michigan team that definitely still has a ton of weapons on the defense. Now let's talk about the transfers coming in. They've got 9 of them. You've got 2 safeties, Wesley Walker from Louisville and Jaden Mangham from MSU, Michigan State, the rival. You've got Ricky Johnson, a cornerback, and Amir Hall, a cornerback coming from UNLV and Albany. And then you've got 2 receivers coming in, Amarian Walker and Charleston, or CJ Charleston. But all of those players, I think, are more depth pieces. They're players that are going to build in the background and maybe be starters in future years. But the players that could potentially start for this team that come through the transfer portal are Jayshawn Barham from Maryland, a linebacker, Josh Preeb, offensive lineman from Northwestern, and then Dominic Zavada, a kicker from Arkansas State. Those 3 players could all find themselves as immediate starters heading into the season. Now, when you look at the quarterback room, this could definitely be the biggest question for Michigan heading into the season for the defending national champs. Now, losing J.J. McCarthy cannot go understated. That man, even with the little passing opportunities he got, or the little needs for passing in some games, he was a pure leader and he was a pure winner, and that showed. But now there's a battle that will be led by Alex Orji at the quarterback position. He's more of a pure athlete as opposed to a pure passer, but he is definitely a drop-off in that passing department when it comes to accuracy especially. But you've also got Jack Tuttle in the room. He played at Indiana for 4 years, and he is with Michigan last year, got a little bit of playing time in 1 game. He's more of a pocket passer in that sense. And then I still haven't ruled out Jaden Davis, the 4-star freshman coming in, but Orji seems to be at the top of the list, even though he has only thrown 1 pass in the past 2 years. Now you move to the running back room. This is the strength of their offense, still the heartbeat of the offense. Donovan Edwards is a very, very capable running back, capable of being a top 10 running back in the country. They also have a ton of talent in their youth, like Ben Hall, like Cole Cabana, who battled back and forth with Darius Taylor to be the best running back in the state of Michigan in in their class. Then they also brought in a 4-star this year, Jordan Marshall, and they still have an experienced Michigan running back in Cleo Mullings on this team as well. So it's a safe bet to say Michigan is going to run the ball early and often a lot this season. The wide receiver room, I think, is their weakest room of any room, both offense and defense. Right now, there's fairly a decent amount of unknown in this offense, and it will be immensely difficult to evaluate the wide receiver position in my eyes if they don't have a quarterback that we know is the guy. Now, Tyler Morris looks like he'll be an important piece in this room. Samaj Morgan is another guy who has some experience on the field in some capacity. I believe he's more in the return game. But beyond those two, you've got the 2 transfers coming in, like I mentioned. You've got a highly rated freshman in Imarian Stewart. And then you've also got this room likely hinging on the quarterback play. So it's going to be a lot of questions for them. But on the tight end side of things, Colston Loveland is going to be one of the most talked about tight ends in the country. He produced last year a ton. He was second on the team in receiving yards with 649. He also had 4 touchdowns, and he will look to continue to add to that. There are also some future names to keep an eye on in this room: Zach Marshall, Brady Priestcorn. But overall, that's kind of what's waiting in the wings. Now, the offensive line, that's where my questions are kind of on there for the offensive line, not because they haven't had people developing in the background, but more so because they lost 6 players to the NFL. Now that's something that most programs can't bounce back from. But the interesting thing here of maybe not worrying too much, like I said, you brought in that transfer, which will be productive. But on top of that, your new head coach is your previous offensive line coach. So if anybody knows who is ready and what to look for, it was Sherrone Moore. And so if he looked across the room and he was like, look, I know we're fine here. I only feel like we need 1 transfer, and I like this kid. We'll bring him in. Because if Michigan would have approached different offensive linemen, they probably would have entered the portal, and they probably would have ended up at Michigan. But it seems like Sherrone Moore is pretty comfortable with the guys that were next up, the guys that have been working in the background, the guys that have been putting in the work. And so I'm going to trust Sherrone Moore here. I think this offensive line is going to be okay. They might have some hiccups. They might have some stumbles compared to the 6 that have been dominating the entire nation the last few years. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a drop-off as some might think. Now, overall, the offense has a lot of production gone with McCarthy, with Corum, with Johnson, with Roman, with A.J. Barner, and the 6 offensive linemen all off the NFL. But if they can find the right fits at quarterback and offensive line replacements, I think Michigan will be difficult to stop once again. And if they don't, they will be relying on the defense and the running backs to win tight contests. Now, speaking of the defense, last year, it had the best defense in the country, bar none. It's probably one of the best 2 defenses I've ever seen in my lifetime, other than that Georgia defense. So they were first in total defense, second in the nation in pass defense, 5th in the nation in rush defense, 1st in scoring defense, and 4th in nation in turnovers gained. And on that defense, 17 players played 300 plus snaps. 9 of those 17 will be back. Now, 7 left for the NFL, 1 left in the transfer portal. Keon Sabb went to the Alabama Crimson Tide. But beyond that, that's Will Johnson returning, Makari Page, Mason Graham, Derek Moore, Rod Moore, Kenneth Grant, Josiah Stewart, Ernest Hausman, and Quentin Johnston. That's 9 players, and those 9 players bring back 310 tackles in production, 8 interceptions in production, 17 sacks in production, and 2 forced fumbles in production just from last season. So this defense can be extremely strong. Once again, this defense will be what helps this team find its most success. But last, I want to look at the 2024 class. They have 14 4-stars coming in. Jaden Davis is a potential future quarterback for them. Maybe he could be the current quarterback if he can put it together quickly. But names like Andrew Sprague, who is their number 1 commit, offensive tackle, Jordan Marshall, a running back who could find his way into that room maybe in a year. And then Jeremiah Beasley, a linebacker who I think could make an immediate impact if the need pops up. But all players that could potentially redshirt if Michigan needs them to. Michigan always just wants their best players on the field, so we'll see how that goes. But does Minnesota have any chance in this matchup? We're going to talk about strengths, weaknesses, and the make or break to end today's show coming up next. First, I want to talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel, because right now you can dive in and you can take advantage of a daily boost or a bonus on every single day of the summer. It's still summer. It will be gone before we know it, but right now you can still take advantage. So go to FanDuel.com, because FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus on the daily, every day, all summer long, and you can dive in The Olympics are not done. You've still got Olympic basketball going on. You've still got a ton of fun events to take part in, but then WNBA will be back up after the Olympics are done. MLB will be back in full swing. There will be a couple more golfing events that you can take an advantage of and dream up bets anytime. And if you're like, those aren't my sports, Kane, stop talking to me about golf. Stop talking to me about MLB. Look, football is right around the corner. We are talking about football almost every single day from now till kickoff. So you can definitely go dream up bets that way too. Minnesota is favored to beat North Carolina in the home opener by 2.5 points. That could be a tight one. I'm still hesitant on that, but like I've said time and time again, I like the under on the total points of 50.5, but you can dream up whatever bets you want over at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and of Locked On. All right, Gopher fans, we are wrapping this one up quick with some quick strengths, weaknesses, and a make or break in the Week 5 matchup against Michigan. Now, when we're talking about strengths of Michigan, they have the best defense in the nation, returning 9 big-time players once again. That's going to be tough. Donovan Edwards has shown he can be an elite running back like he did in 2022, and the staff, although new on paper, have a ton of proven success that should help them not miss a beat, even though Harbaugh is gone. Now, coming off a national championship, you also were going on the road. This will be Minnesota's first road game, and they will have a home crowd advantage, bar none. So those are the strengths of Michigan in this matchup. The weaknesses, they have a huge offensive line departures, but they have a few relative unknowns to the rest of us. But like I had mentioned, Sharon Moore knows that group better than anybody else. Their quarterback play could take a huge nosedive, and that is definitely a weakness right now. And then are there any actual game changers for their wide receivers? So outside of running the ball, can they do anything else? That will be a big question. But overall, I think the make or break in this game, Michigan lost a ton of important players from their undefeated national championship team. That said, they are still stacked. And if they can answer the quarterback and offensive line questions, they could be right back at the top of the conference once again. Their schedule not doing them many favors. I believe they play Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State this year. That is going to be one heck of a schedule, but they're going to be battle tested. If they can pull off 2 of those wins, they'll find themselves in the playoffs very likely. So in this game, Minnesota not only needs to take care of the ball in this matchup, unlike the first drive last year where we threw a pick 6, but they also need to be a force in creating turnovers on the other side of it, especially on the road. So the top 3 make or breaks are creating turnovers and creating short fields for your offense, taking care of the football when you are on offense, and then finally play to win the game, not conservatively, not to lose by the least amount of points. You have to take shots. You have to take risks. You have to go out there and act like you can take down a juggernaut, even if you're the underdog. So Minnesota has to play to win. They have to take shots. They have to be aggressive. And then they also have to create turnovers and short fields for themselves and not turn the ball over on offense. That is the make or break for Minnesota. It's going to be their toughest or second toughest matchup of the entire season, but hopefully they can pull off an upset. Hopefully they can keep it competitive. We'll find out as we get to the season, but tomorrow we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about the week 6 opponent, USC Trojans. That's going to be a fun talk. That's going to be probably one of my most look forward to breakdowns of the season. I'll see you then. Row the boat, Sky Go Gophers, as always. And please don't forget to hit subscribe.